Samara Green tugged the edge of her medical coat as she hurried down the crowded corridor of Celestial Station 7, the largest floating outpost in this sector. Dozens of injured soldiers, civilians, and alien travelers lay in makeshift triage pods that lined the walls. Only an hour ago, a fierce skirmish had broken out nearby between a GDF, Galactic Defense Force, patrol, and an unidentified alien fleet. The aftermath was chaos. Sirens blared, smoke and sparks burst from ruptured pipes, and everyone raced to stabilize the wounded. Samara's normally neat ponytail had come loose, strands of dark hair clinging to her damp forehead. She felt both exhaustion and adrenaline surge through her as she stepped into the main med bay. Inside, the harsh lighting revealed a grim scene. Nurses and medbots scurried between bedsides, administering painkillers and collecting data on portable scanners. The acrid scent of cauterized flesh mingled with antiseptic fluid. Samara was a civilian doctor stationed here under a Peace Corps contract, brought in to help with cross-species medical treatments, and her days had been hectic since the outbreak of hostilities a few weeks back. The fact that no one was entirely sure who this new alien threat was only added to the tension. She and the other staff had grown used to patching up wounded from half a dozen star systems, never certain whether it was friend or foe who'd appear on the gurneys next. She paused by one of the triage pods, where a nurse was adjusting a sedation unit for a human soldier who'd lost an arm. Satisfied that the sedation was stable, Samara turned to an enormous pod at the far end of the bay. A ring of medbots hovered there, clearly in a flurry of activity. She heard a sharp beep, an urgent alarm. She hurried closer, weaving around scattered carts of plasma packs and half-empty supply cases. "Dr. Green," called an older man with silver hair. "Dr. Chaucer," who was the station's chief of medicine. He stood next to the open triage pod and motioned her over. Samara joined him, and her eyes widened at what she saw. The patient was tall, at least 7 feet, with charcoal gray scales covering long, sinewy limbs. 2 horns curved backward from a rigid crest above the brow. In place of a nose, he had slitted vents, and his mouth was set in a grim line, parted slightly to reveal the tips of razor-like teeth. Every bit of him radiated a warrior's bearing, yet the savage wounds across his torso were streaming dark, viscous blood that refused to clot. "This is Commander Rathen, Dr. Chaucer whispered, though the hush of his voice seemed more out of respect than secrecy. "He's from the Zender Dominion, a race we don't see often. They were caught in that skirmish an hour ago and brought here under emergency protocol. The Dominion is fiercely proud. I'd guess he didn't want help from humans, but he didn't have a choice." Samara scanned the medical monitor. Commander Rathen's vitals were catastrophically low. His pulse spiked in arrhythmic jolts, and his oxygen levels were plummeting. More concerning, several medbots had tried transfusions of standard xenoplasma, the synthetic fluid usually accepted by dozens of known species, but his body had rejected it. The readout indicated that Rathen required a specific blood composition. "Who else might have a match?" Samara asked, typing commands into her handheld device to cross-check the station supply. "We've only got a few pints of universal xenoplasma left, and it's not working." Chaucer frowned, the lines of worry deepening on his face. "None of the standard supplies are compatible. I've gone through every record of cross-species donors. Nothing but an initial screen of your blood type came back. Interesting. A 70% overlap with a Zender's blood markers. Frankly, I've never seen anything like it." "What?" Samara felt her heart sink. She knew her blood type was rare, even among humans, but the idea that it might partially match an alien warrior's physiology was unbelievable. "But I'm no xenobiologist, Dr. Chaucer. Isn't there a risk of catastrophic organ failure if we attempt a direct transfusion from a human to a Zender?" "Yes," Chaucer said bluntly, "the risk is enormous. But our only alternative is to do nothing, in which case Commander Rathen dies within the hour. The Dominion have demanded we save him, or they'll consider this an act of hostility. And aside from politics, he's still a living being, Samara. If we don't help, no one will." She exhaled shakily, looking down at the unconscious alien. He was imposing even in this state, a lethal presence bound to a medpod. Yet a flicker of pity tugged at her. The oath she'd taken as a doctor, to preserve life whenever possible, resonated in her mind. "Then let's do it," she said, setting her jaw. "Prep me for a transfusion." Immediately, a half-dozen medbots whirred over, scanning Samara's arm, preparing 4 lines, and adjusting chemical feeds. Dr. Chaucer donned sterile gloves and supervised the procedure. Samara felt a jab in her vein as the suction began to draw out her blood. Moments later, the lines connected to Rathan's body, pumping bright red human blood into his bloodstream. She couldn't help noticing the contrast between the dark, near-black hue of his own spilled blood and the vivid crimson of hers. For a moment, it looked almost grotesque. "Give it a few minutes," Chaucer murmured. "We'll watch for any sign of violent rejection." Her vision blurred at the edges. She'd donated blood many times to humans, but never quite in such a stressful environment. As she steadied her breathing, she glanced at Rathan's face. Initially, there was no change. But then, in small increments, color returned to the ridges around his closed eyes. His heart rate, displayed on the monitor, was stabilizing. Samara felt her own heart flutter in relief. She had no idea if this meant genuine acceptance of the blood, but at least Commander Rathan was no longer on the brink of immediate death. Just as the beeping of the medical scanner quieted, another alarm tore through the station. The overhead lights flickered and an automated voice blared. "Warning, intruder alert. Hostile boarding parties detected on levels 2 and 3. All personnel, prepare for immediate evacuation or defense." Samara jerked her head up. "Dr. Chaucer cursed under his breath. "This place is under attack again. Are we ever going to have peace?" He turned to Samara. "Stay with Commander Rathan. He's stable for now. But if these invaders are after him..." She didn't need him to finish. If these new attackers wanted the Dominion commander, or if they meant to take hostages, Samara might have to fight or flee. She swallowed hard, adrenaline flooding her veins again. She'd just given her blood to an alien warrior, and now she was supposed to protect him. She had no illusions about how well that might go if heavily armed soldiers poured into the medbay. Still, she steeled herself. "All right," she said softly, "I'll do my best." Outside, footsteps thundered in the corridor. Samara grabbed a small sidearm from an emergency locker. She'd never shot at anyone before, but these were desperate times. The overhead announcement repeated, "All staff, evacuate to designated safe rooms." Samara hovered near Rathan, uncertain how to move him in his fragile state. Then the doors burst open. A half-dozen figures in black combat armor stormed in, brandishing pulse rifles that shimmered with high-tech energy. One of them, presumably the leader, scanned the rows of triage pods until his gaze landed on the towering form of Commander Rathan. He barked an order in a harsh language Samara didn't recognize, and his squad fanned out. With her heart pounding, Samara crouched behind a rolling tray of instruments. She was no soldier, but the men in black armor advanced directly to Rathan's pod, ignoring the other wounded. One of them lifted a scanning device, presumably verifying the identity of their target. They had come for the alien commander, precisely as Dr. Chaucer had feared. Samara glanced at Rathan's face, searching for any sign of consciousness. Nothing. He looked as though he were in a deep slumber. His chest rose and fell with the mechanical hiss of the respirator that still fed him oxygen. If these intruders unplugged him or tried to haul him away, he wouldn't survive. She had to act, but how? In a moment of wild desperation, she remembered the sedation control panel on the side of his pod. If she decreased the sedation dosage, maybe he'd regain enough awareness to defend himself. It was a gamble. He was still dangerously weak, and the stress might kill him. But their situation couldn't be worse. Biting her lip, Samara crept forward and pressed the sedation override, carefully adjusting the dial. A quiet beep acknowledged the command, and she saw a slight change in Rathan's breathing pattern. She hoped he'd wake up fast. The black-armored leader barked another order, and 2 of his men reached for the medpod's release locks. intending to open the transparent enclosure. Samara felt a surge of panic. She jumped up, brandishing her small sidearm. "Step away from him!" she shouted, her voice unexpectedly firm despite her fear. They spun around. One soldier raised his rifle. Samara fired without thinking. The weapon jerked in her hand, the shot going wild. Sparks exploded against the far wall. In the lull, the intruders returned fire, a volley of plasma bolts scorching the air near her. Samara dropped behind the pod, certain she was outgunned. She braced for them to simply blast the entire area. Then a roar echoed through the medbay. It was deep, guttural, fierce. Samara's gaze snapped toward the pod. Rathan's eyes had opened, slit-pupiled and burning with fury. The sedation was wearing off, and with it came the fury of a Zender warrior. The intruders hesitated. Even Samara felt her stomach twist at that inhuman sound. The black-armored men closed ranks and fired at the awakening alien. Plasma blasts hammered the pod's shield for a moment before it shorted out. The glass-like enclosure shattered. Rathan lunged upright, ignoring the spatter of white-hot plasma scorching his scales. Before the intruders could adjust, he tore out the 4 lines from his arms, roared again, and leapt at them with lethal speed. One soldier went down under a savage swipe of his clawed hand. Another tried to bring his rifle up, but Rathan's tail whipped around, striking him across the chest and sending him crashing into a row of supply carts. Samara watched in disbelief as Rathan's wounds, still fresh, should have slowed him. Yet he moved faster than any living being she'd witnessed. The intravenous lines were flicking drops of Samara's bright red blood that now coursed through Rathan's veins, across the floor. It was as though her donation had sparked a new energy within him. In seconds, the squad lay incapacitated, moaning or unconscious. Rathan stood unsteadily, panting. His entire body trembled as though a massive current of power was pulsing through him. Dark fluid seeped from the older lacerations, but a few of the more superficial ones appeared to be clotting at a remarkable rate. He glanced around, spotted Samara half-crouched behind the pod. For a moment, she tensed, unsure if he'd view her as a threat. Then recognition, or at least curiosity, flickered in his reptilian eyes. His voice was a low growl. "You gave me your blood." He spoke in the common trade language, though the accent was thick and his throat sounded raw. Samara nodded, trying to slow her racing heart. "Yes, I'm Dr. Samara Green. I had no choice. You were dying." Rathan gazed at her, then at the unconscious or groaning intruders sprawled around him. He exhaled, his breath rasping. "And they attacked you because they want me, or they want something from me." He raised a 3-fingered hand to his chest, wincing in pain. Samara swallowed. "We should get you somewhere safe. Our station is under attack, and it looks like more of them could be boarding. You can't fight them all in this condition." Commander Rathan glanced at his own injuries and then gave a curt nod, as though acknowledging logic despite his warrior pride. "All right, Doctor," he said, his tone holding a trace of reluctant respect. "Lead the way." They slipped into the corridor. Samara keyed a medbot to follow them, carrying supplies. The station was pandemonium. Alarms blared. Bursts of weapons fire echoed from distant decks. The flickering overhead lights gave everything a disjointed feel, as if they were stepping through a nightmare. Twice they had to hide from patrols of black-armored enemies. Samara suspected these mercenaries were after more than just Rathan. Perhaps they intended to take over the station or rob its resources. Eventually, they reached an emergency stairwell that led toward the docking bay. Samara's plan was simple: get Rathan onto a smaller evac vessel and flee before the attackers locked down every exit. She led him carefully down the steps, aware of his ragged breathing, but also marveling that he was still on his feet. "Your blood," he rumbled at one point, leaning on the railing. "It's doing something to me." "Doing what?" Samara whispered back, scanning the hallway below. "Is it causing pain?" "Pain, yes, but also, I feel stronger, more alert." He inhaled deeply, and his eyes gleamed in the dim lighting. "I can smell fear all over this station, including your own." But I sensed something else, a kind of clarity. I've never. He stopped, perhaps because it was too strange to articulate. Samara didn't press him. Instead, she guided him onward, praying they'd escape in time. They passed through a wide set of blast doors, entering the docking bay. The sight that greeted them made her heart sink. Multiple ships were launching in a frantic attempt to evacuate. Some smaller vessels were already drifting in space, heavily damaged. She saw half a dozen black-armored figures near a sleek shuttle, presumably controlling which craft left the station. If Samara tried to pilot a ship, they'd undoubtedly shoot them down. Rathen took in the scene. "We can fight them," he said, though his voice was unsteady. "We have to take a shuttle." "You're still recovering," Samara said, frowning. "That group is heavily armed. Maybe we can slip onto a different ship." A sudden explosion rocked the bay. A section of the ceiling collapsed, raining sparks and twisted metal. Shouts erupted. Samara seized Rathen's arm and sprinted behind a cargo container. The chaos gave them a momentary advantage. The mercenaries were distracted by the structural damage. Rathen didn't hesitate. He dashed toward the nearest unguarded craft, a battered but space-worthy scout vessel. Samara followed, Medbot trailing behind. Inside the scout vessel's cramped cockpit, Samara quickly powered up the engines. Rathen, gritting his teeth, strapped into a seat behind her. "Lock the hatch," she hissed, flicking switches on the control console. "We'll have to do a manual launch if the station's docking clamps are offline." A final jolt shook the craft. Through the forward viewport, they saw the docking bay's energy shield falter. Air rushed out in a flurry of debris. Samara keyed the thrusters, heart pounding. By some miracle, the clamps released. The scout vessel lurched free of its berth. She angled the nose up and slammed the throttle forward. Laser fire streaked across the bay, but the battered little ship shot out into space before the mercenaries could fully target them. Samara let out a shaky breath, glancing at Rathen. The Zender commander was slumped against the seat, one hand pressed to his side. Blood, both alien and human, was smeared on his battered armor. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a faint nod of acknowledgement. "You saved me again." "Don't speak," Samara urged gently, guiding the vessel away from the station. "Your wounds haven't fully healed." He closed his eyes, exhaling. "I owe you a debt, Doctor. My people don't take such debts lightly." She merely pressed her lips together. At that moment, she wasn't thinking about debts, only survival. The view through the cockpit window showed the drifting shape of Celestial Station 7. Parts of it burned, venting atmosphere into the vacuum. Some unknown mercenary group had attacked, and she had no clue where to go next. But at least they were alive. That was more than she'd dared hope an hour ago. 2 hours later, Samara steadied the autopilot and stepped into the small medical alcove behind the cockpit to check on Rathen. She'd done her best to patch him up during flight, but his condition was complicated by the rejection of standard xenoplasma. The only reason he was stable was the partial infusion of her own blood. Even that, however, might not last. She ran a handheld scanner over his vitals. He stirred, opening his eyes slowly. In the small confines of the alcove, his presence felt massive, almost overwhelming. "Dr. Green," he growled softly. "Where are we?" "Drifting in neutral space," she explained, forcing a half-smile. "Away from the station. I set a course for the outer sectors of the Tevra system. It's remote enough that we might avoid immediate pursuit. Assuming those mercenaries don't have a tracker on our hull, we should have a few hours to figure out our next move." He sat up, rolling his shoulders. "My body feels different." She took note of the dark, scaly plates along his arms. Some had receded slightly, revealing smoother patches of skin. It was as though his cells were fluctuating, uncertain how to integrate her blood. "I need to run more tests," she said, raising the scanner. "Do you consent?" A slight snort. "Humans, in your obsession with permission." "Very well." Samara tried not to take offense, reminding herself he was an alien who might have a different culture. The scanner beeped as it read his cellular structure. Her brow furrowed. "Your hemoglobin levels are stabilizing." That shouldn't be possible with a xenotransfusion of this nature. Unless your body is somehow adapting. I can feel the difference, Rathen murmured, gazing at his hands. My senses are sharper in some ways, dulled in others. I smell the metal of this ship more acutely than usual. I can even pick up your scent, though it's faint. But my head aches. Sometimes I hear a whine like feedback in my ears. Samara turned the device so he could see the display. Your white blood cells appear to be fusing with certain Zener markers. It's as if your body is partially rewriting its immunological code. This is unprecedented. Typically, we see total rejection or total acceptance, but never a hybrid response. Rathen's eyes narrowed. Is that good or bad? She sighed. I don't know. It might allow for a remarkable healing process, or it could trigger organ failure at any moment. She turned away to rummage through a small cabinet. We don't have the equipment here to do a full analysis, but maybe we can find help on a medical outpost or with someone who has the expertise to handle cross-species physiology. A Zender healer, Rathen said, but there was an edge of doubt in his voice. Though they might see my condition as contamination. My people are proud, doctor. Some of them consider humans inferior. If they discover I've been infused with human blood. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Samara paused. Commander, do you want me to help you find your people? His jaw tightened. I'm not sure. The Dominion might decide I'm an abomination. His eyes flicked to her. That doesn't mean I fear them. But politics in the Dominion can be cruel. In the best case, they'll isolate me in a lab. In the worst case, let's just say I might vanish quietly. She swallowed. I understand. Then we'll try to find some neutral facility or maybe a GDF station that's still intact. But after what happened back there, the GDF might also be compromised. Compromised in what way? He asked, suspicious. Those attackers, someone funded them, someone who had intel on Celestial Station 7. The GDF posted guards, but these mercenaries got in anyway. I suspect a deeper plot. You're obviously important to them. Rathen's brow ridges drew together. My people and the GDF have skirmished in the past. But a random group of mercenaries is different. Perhaps they want my genetic material. If they discovered the partial compatibility with a human, that could be used to create a new breed of soldier or a bioweapon. We must keep moving. Samara thought of the horrifying possibilities, someone engineering unstoppable hybrid fighters. She nodded, stepping back into the cockpit. A blinking screen showed minimal fuel reserves. Commander, we've got just enough power to reach a spaceport on the edge of the Tevra system. Some place called Orel's Dock. It's small and out of the way. Maybe we can rest, gather supplies, find a clue about who's hunting us. Fine, Rathen muttered, hauling himself to his feet. He joined her in the cockpit, eyes narrowed at the star map. Let's hope this Orel's Dock is less eventful than the station we left behind. They arrived at Orel's Dock nearly 8 hours later, having drifted in stealth mode for most of the trip. Samara was exhausted, her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. Rathen dozed in the co-pilot's seat off and on, occasionally stirring in pain or to question the readings on the console. The ship's sensors picked up no sign of pursuit. If the mercenaries were after them, either they'd lost the trail or they were lying in wait somewhere else. Orel's Dock turned out to be a ramshackle outpost bolted to a small asteroid. Through the viewport, Samara saw a cluster of mismatched docking arms and neon signage flickering in the vacuum. She guided the scout vessel inside, paying a small docking fee from a station kiosk. Rathen donned a dark cloak from the ship's storage, concealing his distinctive form. The two of them stepped onto the main concourse, a dimly lit corridor that smelled of stale air and engine coolant. They drew curious stares. Samara suspected a female human traveling with a tall, hooded figure was unusual, but nobody bothered them. The crowd looked more like petty smugglers and star drifters than sophisticated mercenaries. She spotted a neon sign reading Mediclinic. That seemed like the best place to start. Inside the clinic, a bored-looking attendant glanced up. We treat minor injuries only at minimal cost. If you need advanced services, go to Helion City or anywhere else that actually invests in real medicine. Samara forced a smile. We just need some basic supplies, bandages, antibiotics, maybe a blood analysis kit. She didn't mention Rathan's condition, mindful of eavesdroppers. The attendant shrugged. We have that. 40 credits. Payment up front. Samara's heart sank. She barely had that many credits left. She was about to haggle when Rathan stepped forward, rummaging in a small pouch at his belt. He produced a single shard of some crystalline mineral. Trade, he said gruffly, placing it on the counter. The attendant's eyes widened. Is that Gorth crystal? Rathan nodded once. It's worth far more than 40 credits, the attendant said, suspicion creeping into his tone. Where'd you get it? Payment for safe passage, Rathan said dismissively. Take what you need for the supplies and give me the rest in local currency. In seconds, the attendant was all business. He called for a side terminal to appraise the crystal. Moments later, with a reverent expression, he counted out a handful of cred sticks and prepared a kit of medical supplies. Samara realized Commander Rathan must be from a high rank or wealthy lineage to carry such valuable crystals. She politely waited until the transaction was complete, then gathered the supplies, feeling a surge of relief. At least they'd have the means to treat him if his condition worsened. They ducked into a side corridor to avoid further attention. Samara found a dingy alcove that served as a maintenance closet. She set up the portable blood analysis kit under a flickering overhead light. Rathan removed his cloak, wincing at the movement. She performed a quick needle prick on his arm. The bead of blood that welled up was no longer deep black. It had a dark crimson hue, closer to human, but still alien. She tested it, glancing at the small screen. This is remarkable, she breathed. Your blood cells are now a hybrid, part Zender, part human. There's no sign of rejection, and your RBC count has actually increased. Your body's producing this new form of blood on its own. He grimaced, flexing his hand. I feel stronger than ever, but it's unnatural. Samara gently pressed a gauze pad against the tiny puncture. Nature can be surprising, Commander. For all we know, the Zender might have some ancient genetic overlap with humans, some ancestor race that seeded multiple worlds. That's just speculation, but it might explain why my blood matched you. Rathan said nothing, gazing at the readout. Then his eyes narrowed. He lifted his head, nostrils flaring. Someone's coming, he hissed. A moment later, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Samara quickly stashed the analysis kit in her backpack. Rathan threw the cloak over his shoulders just as a figure in a battered flight jacket appeared at the closet entrance. The stranger's eyes flicked between them. He was a tall, lean man with unkempt hair and a blaster at his hip. You two look a bit lost, he said, voice smooth with an undercurrent of danger. Might need a guide around O'Rell's dock. Names cost money, though. Samara's heart hammered, but she kept her composure. We're fine, thanks. Just, the big guy there doesn't look so fine. Could be there's a bounty on his head. Could be I'm in the mood to collect. Rathan tensed, stepping forward. I wouldn't try it, he growled. The man smirked. Hostile, eh? Listen, friend, I've got no personal quarrel. But you have that Zender aura about you. And I've heard rumors about Dominion warriors. Some folks pay handsomely to see them caged or dissected. Samara felt a wave of revulsion. She met Rathan's gaze, saw the fury building behind his eyes. Commander, we can't draw attention, she murmured. He exhaled, leveling a glare at the stranger. If you want to walk away, do it now. The stranger's hand drifted to his blaster. Samara was about to intervene when something flickered across the stranger's face. Fear, maybe. Wait a second, he muttered, leaning in to look at Rathan's partially visible scales. They said something about a Zender with human blood. Hell, might be rumors, but if it's you... He never finished. In one swift motion, Rathan's tail lashed out from under the cloak, striking the stranger's wrist. The blaster clattered to the floor. Samara gasped, stepping aside as Rathan moved with lethal speed, pinning the stranger against the wall. The man's eyes bulged. Who told you about me? Rathan demanded. Speak. Some group? Calling themselves Black Dawn, the man wheezed. They've been looking for any sign of a Zender-human hybrid. They've got ears everywhere, paying for info. I was just hoping for a cut. All right. Rathan's hand tightened briefly. Then he let go. The man slid to the ground, coughing. Samara stepped back to avoid confrontation. She suspected a fight here in the corridor would draw too much attention. The man's words, though, were chilling. Zinder-human hybrid. That was exactly the rumor they didn't want to spread. Go, Rat Hen snarled. If I see you again, you won't walk away. The man scrambled to his feet and bolted, leaving his blaster behind. Rat Hen turned to Samara. So it's begun. Word is out. They're searching for me, for us. Samara nodded grimly. We need to leave this station immediately. But with them paying for information, we'll be spotted the second we try to buy fuel or take off. Let's see if there's another route out. Maybe a cargo freighter leaving soon. They slipped through the corridors, scanning overhead monitors for flight schedules. Samara tried to appear casual as she passed knot after knot of shady travelers. Rathan's presence made subtlety difficult. He towered over most, and the cloak only partially hid his features. More than once, Samara glimpsed curious looks or heard hushed whispers about a Zindar or a big reptile. She quickened her pace. At last, they found a battered cargo vessel called the Jade Dawn, preparing for departure. Its pilot, a stooped elderly woman with an artificial eye, was reviewing a manifest. Samara mustered her most trustworthy smile. We need passage, she said softly. Can we pay you? The woman's artificial eye word. You got credits? Rathan held up one of his Garoth crystals. We can pay more than your cargo run is worth. A flicker of greed lit the pilot's face. Well, step aboard. I won't ask questions if you don't. Samara led Rathan up the rusted ramp. The interior smelled of old grease and stale coffee. If the Jade Dawn managed to jump away from this asteroid without an engine failure, Samara would consider it a miracle. Still, it beat lingering on Orel's dock. They stowed themselves in a cramped cabin near the cargo bay. Once inside, Samara double-checked the door lock. Rathan settled heavily on a small bench, exhaling. We'll get out of here, Samara said, though nerves twisted her stomach. But where do we go next? Everyone seems to know about you. About your condition. Your condition. Rathan's eyes gleamed with suppressed rage and uncertainty. We must find out who's behind this, and we must ensure they don't harness my blood. If Black Dawn or a group like them replicates what happened to me, Samara finished for him. We could see an army of unstoppable hybrids. Or worse, they might refine the process for infiltration, sabotage, genocide. The possibilities are endless and horrific. He nodded, then glanced at her. It's not just me they want. You gave me your blood. That might make you valuable to them, too. Samara swallowed. She hadn't even considered that, but it was obvious now. 100 questions swirled in her mind. How did they already know about this so quickly? Who was feeding them intel? Could the GDF be compromised? Or the Dominion itself? Before she could voice these thoughts, the cargo vessel's engines roared. A metallic clank signaled the docking clamps releasing. Slowly, the Jade Dawn maneuvered out of the asteroid port. Samara and Rathan exchanged a glance, both uncertain of the future. They were on the run, wanted by an unknown but powerful network, and in possession of a biological secret that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. 3 days later, the Jade Dawn dropped them at a small junction station near the outskirts of Dominion space. The old pilot had seemed relieved to see them disembark, though she took her payment in crystals without complaint. Samara and Rathan found themselves on a station that was effectively a crossroads for multiple shipping lanes. Neutral territory. It boasted a few refueling docks, a modest marketplace, and a scattering of lodging options. It was far from luxurious, but at least it was out of the main spotlight. They rented a cramped compartment with 2 bunks. Samara scanned Rathan's vitals again. He was healing, which was extraordinary given his ordeal. In fact, his wounds had shrunk to faint scars. She sensed that each day he grew slightly more comfortable with his new physiology, though he rarely spoke about it. She also noticed subtle changes in his personality. He was still proud, still authoritative, but occasionally he displayed an odd curiosity about humans. Once, she caught him studying her hands as though fascinated by the softness of her skin compared to his own hardened scales. I was taught humans are weak, he admitted in a rare moment of vulnerability. Your bodies are fragile, your emotions volatile, but your blood, it's given me more strength than I've felt in years. And you, he trailed off. Samara blushed slightly, not sure how to respond. She decided to focus on the practical. We need someone who can fully analyze this phenomenon. A xenobiologist or a research institution that won't turn us in. Do you know of any neutral experts? Maybe someone at the Dominion's fringe or an ex-GDF scientist. Rathen rubbed his chin. There is a rumor about a group calling themselves the Wardens of Keth. They reside in hidden enclaves, studying ancient precursor artifacts. Some say the precursors were the ones who seeded the galaxy with compatible DNA eons ago. If that's true, maybe the Wardens have knowledge we need. Samara's eyes widened. I've heard half-myths about the precursors. Many consider them legends, but if they exist, they might explain how your body accepted my blood. She paused. Do you know where to find these Wardens? A grim smile curled Rathen's lip. They're elusive, but I once encountered a Zender pilot who claimed to have seen one of their hidden stations near the Morask Nebula. It's a dangerous region. Ion storms, gravitational anomalies, but that might be our only lead. Samara nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. Then that's our destination. A moment later, a beep alerted them to an incoming broadcast. She tapped the comm panel in the cramped cabin. A news feed crackled through, displaying a stern-faced announcer. Breaking news from the Dominion border. Official sources report a bounty placed on Commander Rathen of the Zender Dominion, believed to be traveling with a human associate. Both are considered extremely dangerous. A reward of 1 million credits is offered for information leading to their capture. This alert is being disseminated to all major starports. Extreme caution is advised. Samara locked eyes with Rathen, fear surging in her chest. 1 million credits? That's huge. Everyone will be looking for us now. Rathen's tail lashed anxiously. We leave now. If half the scum in this station see that broadcast, they'll swarm us. Let's find a ship, hire it or steal it if we must, and head for Morask Nebula. They quickly gathered their minimal belongings. Samara's mind spun with anxiety. The galaxy had just been turned against them by an enormous bounty. She clung to a single thought. The Wardens of Keth might be their only chance to understand how and why her blood had merged with Rathen's. And if they failed, they would be hunted endlessly by the Dominion, by mercenaries, by everyone. They hurried out into the station's corridor. The overhead lights flickered and announcements blared about inbound cargo transports. Samara's gaze darted around, scanning the crowd for suspicious looks. She saw more than a few heads. Turn their way. Word of the bounty must have spread instantly. There, Rathen hissed, pointing to an old M-72 Starhopper moored at the far docking bay. No pilot was in sight. We can commandeer that. Commander, Samara said, I'm not comfortable stealing. A sudden shout interrupted her. 2 station security officers rounded the corner, eyes locked onto them. Samara saw the telltale glimmer of neural disruptors strapped to their belts. She'd heard rumors that these disruptors could drop a target in seconds. Her heart pounded. Rathen didn't hesitate. He surged forward, tail sweeping, knocking one officer off his feet. The other officer fumbled for the disruptor, but Samara yanked a stunner from a supply crate and zapped him. He convulsed, dropping to the floor. She looked at Rathen, adrenaline pounding in her veins. Now we have no choice. Let's go. They sprinted toward the Starhopper. Samara keyed the docking ramp open. The vessel's interior was cramped, clearly designed as a short-range transport. She slid in the pilot's seat, breath ragged. Rathen sealed the door behind them. The station's lockdown siren began wailing. Samara frantically bypassed the ignition code. She wasn't an expert, but she'd studied enough basic ship infiltration during her training. Sparks flew from the console. Then the engine coughed to life. She exhaled a huge sigh of relief, accelerating out of the docking bay. The Starhopper soared into open space, leaving the station behind. Alarms blinked on the scanners. 2 security cruisers were pursuing them, but Samara punched the throttle, diving through a gap in the station's perimeter. The Starhopper was small and agile, easily slipping past the bigger ships. Within minutes, the pursuit was out of sensor range. "We're free," she breathed, heart still pounding. "For now," Radhen said darkly, scanning the star map. "Set course for the Morask Nebula. If the Wardens exist, we'll find them there." Samara keyed in the coordinates. The Starhopper's hyperdrive rattled ominously, but it engaged, stretching the stars into lines of white light. They jumped into faster-than-light travel. In that timeless moment, Samara felt an odd mixture of triumph and dread. They'd escaped capture again, but now an entire galaxy had a price on their heads. And they were racing into a mysterious nebula, guided only by rumor and myth. She closed her eyes, remembering how this all started. She'd been a simple doctor trying to save a life. She'd offered her blood to an alien warrior, never imagining the cosmic aftermath. She gave his blood to an alien warrior and was rewarded beyond imagination. A dramatic voice in her head joked, as though mocking the improbable journey. Only it was dead serious now. There was no turning back. The Morask Nebula loomed on the Starhopper's display like a swirling mass of violet and crimson gases. It was notoriously turbulent, subject to violent ion storms that could disable ship systems. Sensor readings flickered with ghostly shapes and unusual gravitational pockets. Samara piloted carefully, reading the swirl of energies and adjusting course to avoid the densest clusters of charged particles. Beside her, Radhen stared at the nebula with a strange intensity. It said the precursors built hidden enclaves in places like this. They wanted secrecy, I suppose, to guard their knowledge until some chosen heirs arrived. His voice dripped with skepticism, though. Samara nodded. Legends are often based on shards of truth. Let's hope we find something that can help. She steered the Starhopper into a corridor of relatively calm space between roiling cosmic clouds. The hull crackled with static electricity. She felt her skin prickle. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Proximity alert. Samara jerked her gaze to the scanner. Another ship was there, hidden behind a veil of ionized dust. It was big, much larger than their stolen Starhopper. Instinctively, she readied the thrusters, preparing to veer away. But a transmission pinged through their comm system. "Unidentified vessel, do not be alarmed. We detect one human life sign and one Xener life sign aboard. This is highly unusual. If you seek knowledge of the precursor legacy, follow the beacon we are transmitting." Samara and Radhen exchanged stunned looks. "Wardens," Radhen whispered, almost disbelieving. "They found us first." He nodded at Samara to accept. She pressed the comm. We're here in search of answers. Commander Radhen is." "All will be explained," the calm voice replied. "Proceed to coordinates 72 by 14. Remain at minimal power. Trust us." The comm went silent. Samara's skin crawled, not sure if this was friend or foe, but she saw no immediate signs of aggression. And if these truly were the Wardens of Keth, they might be the only ones who could unravel Rathen's condition. She swallowed hard and guided the Starhopper deeper into the nebula. A faint beacon pinged on the screen, leading them through. Swirling plumes of colored gas. After several tense minutes, a hidden structure materialized from the haze, like an ancient station built into an asteroid, wreathed in purple cosmic clouds. An exterior docking port slid open, revealing an energy shield. Samara eased the Starhopper inside. The whine of docking clamps locked the vessel in place. They stepped onto the station's deck, which was curiously warm and well lit by soft, luminous panels. The architecture was smooth, curving in organic arcs. Unlike any design Samara had seen, it felt alien yet refined. 3 tall figures awaited them in the docking bay. Clad in flowing robes, they had elongated limbs and shimmering, iridescent skin that shifted color under the lights. Their eyes were large, multifaceted, and their voices carried a melodic tone. "Welcome to the Sanctum of Keth," the central figure said. "I am Elishan. My companions are Taro and Nimra. You must be Samara Green and Commander Radhen." Radhen stiffened. "You know of us?" Elishan's mouth curved in what might have been a gentle smile. "We see many things, Zender. Your presence in this nebula is no coincidence. The precursor legacy flows strongly in you now that you share blood with a human. Samara's heart skipped a beat. Elishin's words were eerily accurate. You speak of precursors as if they still exist, she managed. Only their guardians remain. Elishin corrected, stepping gracefully forward. We are watchers, you might say, entrusted with guiding those who unlock the potential seeded millennia ago by our creators. Rathan eyed them warily. What do you want from us? Elishin's tone remained calm, but his eyes flickered with a hint of sadness. We want nothing you're not willing to give. You seek knowledge, and we can provide it. But know this, your union of blood is not an accident. The precursors designed myriad species to be intercompatible, though it remains dormant unless triggered by circumstances like yours. You're now a living example of that grand design. Samara tried to process this. So that's why his body accepted my blood? The precursors wanted cross-species hybrids. Elishin inclined his head. Yes, they believed only by merging traits from diverse species could the galaxy evolve beyond perpetual conflict. Each new hybrid brings unique gifts, physiological, mental, even spiritual. But not everyone shares their vision of unity. Some wish to control or weaponize it. Rathan let out a low growl. You must know that a bounty is on our heads. Mercenaries, possibly entire governments, are after us. We can't stay hidden here forever. The other robed figure, Taro, spoke gently. We do not intend to keep you prisoners. We invite you to learn, to strengthen yourselves, and to decide how this knowledge will shape your future. If you remain ignorant, those who hunt you will have the advantage. If you accept our guidance, you may stand a chance at preserving the path the precursors envisioned. Samara looked at Rathan. She saw a swirl of emotions behind his reptilian eyes. Pride, anger, curiosity, and maybe a spark of hope. He exhaled. Show us what you know. If it helps us defend ourselves from those who seek to exploit me, us, then we'll consider it. Elishin and the others escorted them through winding corridors into a central chamber. Holographic projections glowed, depicting star charts, shifting DNA helixes, and ancient symbols. Samara felt her pulse race. It was like stepping into a library of lost cosmic history. Elishin gestured to a large circular panel at the chamber center. Step onto the platform. We'll perform a deep scan of your combined genetic signatures, revealing how your cells have fused and what potential lies within them. Rathan hesitated, then nodded at Samara. Together, they stepped onto the panel. Soft light enveloped them. Samara's skin tingled, and she squeezed her eyes shut momentarily. A faint musical hum resonated in the air. She sensed rather than saw streams of data pouring across invisible networks. After a minute, the light faded. Elishin studied a glowing console. Fascinating, he murmured. Commander Rathan's Zender traits are strong. Heightened reflexes, regenerative capacity, and thick-scaled plating. Yet now, thanks to the human blood, these abilities are enhanced further, especially in the realm of sensory perception. Meanwhile, Dr. Green's immunological markers have embedded themselves in his system, improving adaptability. It's as though each of you has activated the other's dormant genetic keys. Rathan glanced at Samara. Then the risk of organ failure is gone? Elishin nodded. Your bodies have stabilized. You are something new, a living symbol of unity. But you must tread carefully. The galaxy is not ready for widespread hybridization. It would upend every power structure. If in the wrong hands, entire armies could be bred for conquest. Samara felt a chill. So what do? We can't just hide here forever. People are hunting us. We need to protect ourselves and maybe share what we learn with those who won't abuse it. The third guardian, Nimura, spoke in a gentle tone. We can provide knowledge and training. Commander Rathan, your enhanced senses can grow sharper still with focused discipline. Dr. Green, your scientific insight will be crucial in understanding and eventually regulating the hybridization process. Stay with us for a time. Learn, then decide your path. Rathan's tail swished, but he inclined his head in agreement. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure my people, and all species, are not enslaved by this, even if it means forging alliances I never thought possible. Elishin's expression grew solemn. Then let us begin. Weeks passed within the sanctum of Keth, though it felt dreamlike under the perpetual glow of the station's artificial lights. Samara immersed herself in ancient data archives, learning about the precursor's scattered experiments. Radhin underwent physical and mental training, guided by Taro and Nimura, discovering how to channel his heightened senses without letting them overwhelm him. The more they learned, the more staggering the implications became. The precursors had seeded dozens, perhaps hundreds, of species across the galaxy with complementary genetics. Humans and Zender were just one possible match. Late one cycle, Samara stood on a balcony overlooking a large atrium. Bioluminescent plants grew in carefully arranged clusters, giving the air a serene glow. She sighed, thinking of how her life had changed. Once, she'd been a dedicated medical volunteer, traveling from station to station. Now, she was entangled in a cosmic puzzle that spanned millennia. Radhin approached, wearing simpler garments, no longer the battered warrior armor. His scaled arms looked stronger than ever, but his face was calm. "Samara," he said softly, using her name for the first time without adding doctor. "Elishin told me you found something disturbing in the archives." She nodded, turning to face him. "Yes, there's mention of a group known as the Black Dawn in these records, going back centuries. It seems they've repeatedly tried to harness precursor knowledge for domination. That must be who's hunting us. They want your hybrid genes and possibly mine." His lips curled in a silent snarl. "Then we confront them." Samara felt a flutter of fear. "We can't do it alone. But the wardens say we can't expect broad help from any government. The Dominion and the GDF both mistrust each other, and the infiltration runs deep. If Black Dawn has operatives everywhere." Radhin placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It was a gesture that once would have seemed unthinkable. A Zender warrior comforting a human. "We might not be alone. The wardens stand with us, and perhaps we can recruit allies from among the honest factions of both the Dominion and the GDF. We can choose to remain hidden here indefinitely, or we can act. Our bond, our hybridization, may be the key to bridging these divides." Samara's eyes stung with unexpected emotion. She realized how far she'd come from that day in the med bay. She rested her hand over his, feeling the contrast of his scaled skin. "Then we act," she whispered. "But let's do so wisely." Elishin's voice echoed from the far side of the atrium. "Indeed, the time for secrecy is ending." The Guardian approached, his robe swishing. "Our sensors detect multiple ships entering the nebula. Their energy signature matches those mercenaries from Celestial Station 7. Samara tensed. "They've tracked us here? We suspected they might," Elishin replied calmly. "We hope to have more time, but it seems you will face them sooner rather than later." He gestured for them to follow. "Kulme, we'll prepare the station's defense. The ion storms outside grant us some protection, but we may need to fight." Radhin bared his teeth in a fierce grin. "Let them come." Samara felt her heart thunder. Training aside, this was real combat. She couldn't help but recall how easily those mercenaries had boarded Celestial Station 7. She steadied herself. "We'll protect this place and ensure they don't capture us or the data here." Moments later, they entered a control center lined with consoles. Taro and Nimura coordinated with other wardens, flickering screens displaying the swirling nebula. Multiple enemy vessels converged, ignoring the ion storm hazards. Samara's chest tightened as she recognized the silhouettes of the black armor squads on a live feed from the station's perimeter cameras. Elishin turned to Samara and Radhin. "We will seal non-essential corridors and funnel them to a single entry point. Once we confirm they're inside, we'll release a localized EMP burst that should disable their advanced weaponry for a short window. Use that moment to strike." Radhin nodded. "I'll lead a small strike team." "I'll join you," Samara said, swallowing fear. "I know I'm not a soldier, but I have to see this through." Elishin's gaze was kind. "Be cautious. The knowledge you both carry is precious. If it falls into the wrong hands." Samara steeled herself. We'll succeed. The clash began an hour later. Through the station's corridors, Samara could hear the hum of approaching mercenaries. She stood with Rat-Hen and two wardens behind a thick metal door, hearts pounding. When the sensors indicated the intruders were in position, Elishin triggered the EMP burst. Lights flickered, and distant shouts confirmed that the mercenaries' high-tech rifles had shorted. Now, Rat-Hen barked, throwing open the door. They charged into the corridor. The mercenaries, momentarily disoriented, scrambled to switch to backup weapons or sidearms. Rat-Hen moved like a lightning bolt, claws flashing as he knocked aside the first attacker. Samara fired a compact pulse pistol that Taro had given her, stunning another. She had no illusions about her combat prowess, but she aimed carefully, each shot counting. The wardens fought with an almost balletic grace, their robes swirling as they unleashed bursts of energy from handheld devices Samara had never seen before, some advanced precursor technology, perhaps. The corridor erupted in chaos. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. Samara ducked a wild swing from a mercenary's baton. She jammed the pulse pistol into his side, shocking him into unconsciousness. She whirled, searching for Rat-Hen. She saw him further down the corridor, grappling with two large attackers. One managed to slash him with a vibroknife, drawing a hiss of pain. But Rat-Hen roared, eyes flashing with that fierce hybrid energy, and threw them both against the wall with enough force to crack metal. They slumped down, defeated. Amid the chaos, a tall figure in black stepped forward, face hidden behind an armored visor. His posture radiated authority. He lifted a small device from his belt. Samara recognized it as a neural disruptor. He aimed it at Rat-Hen and fired. Even with the EMP, the device must have been shielded. A wave of invisible energy slammed into Rat-Hen. He staggered, letting out a guttural snarl, clearly in agony. Commander Rat-Hen. The figure's voice was amplified by the visor speakers. Stand down. The Black Dawn wants you alive. Don't force us to break you. Samara lunged, raising her pistol, but the figure spun and fired the neural disruptor at her, too. Pain exploded behind her eyes, and she collapsed, darkness dancing at the edges of her vision. She fought to stay conscious, her finger tightening on the trigger. Before she could fire, a wave of soothing energy washed over her, as though someone had wrapped her mind in a protective blanket. She blinked. Taro and Nimura stood behind her, weaving their precursor devices in complex patterns. The neural disruptor's effect lessened enough for Samara to crawl aside. Rat-Hen pushed through the psychic onslaught, scales rippling. Samara realized that his hybrid physiology might offer partial resistance. He bared his teeth, lunging forward even as his muscles trembled. In one fluid motion, he tore the disruptor from the figure's grip. The man tried to draw a backup weapon, but Rat-Hen's tail coiled around him, pinning him. With a savage twist, Rat-Hen slammed him onto the floor. Panting, Samara rose, still dizzy from the mental attack. She reached them just as Rat-Hen tore off the man's visor, revealing a grim, scarred human face. "Who sent you?" Rat-Hen demanded, voice trembling with fury. "Why do you want me and her?" The man spat blood. "You think we'll just stop? We know about your precious hybrid genes. Our labs will replicate the procedure. You can't hide forever. The galaxy will bow to the new order." Rat-Hen's eyes burned. He raised a clawed hand, and for a moment, Samara feared he'd strike the man dead. But he glanced at her, then exhaled. Instead of killing the prisoner, he pressed a nerve cluster on the man's throat, rendering him unconscious. "No more bloodshed than necessary," Samara said softly, relieved. Taro appeared at their side, breathing heavily. "We've neutralized the rest. They're either unconscious or contained. We must question them about their networks." Elishin joined them, robed figure calm amid the carnage. "Well done. We will confine these mercenaries to a secure section of the station. Perhaps glean intelligence on the Black Dawn's full scope." Samara slumped against the wall, adrenaline draining. Her gaze locked with Rat-Hen's. They'd fought side by side against trained killers, and won. She felt a flicker of pride and connection she'd never known. Nimra approached, scanning the corridor's damage. This battle is over, but the war remains. No doubt more will come, and next time, they may bring heavier forces. Elisha nodded. You two must decide your path. Remain here, hidden indefinitely, or venture out and rally those who might stand with you. The Precursor's vision was always about unity, bridging differences. You might be the first living proof that such unity is more than a dream. Radhin glanced at Samara, a question in his eyes. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of cosmic destiny pressing down. We can't just stand by, she said. We have to do something. Expose the Black Dawn. Share what we've learned with those who won't exploit it. He nodded, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Then together, we'll shape the next chapter of this galaxy's history. Elishan's multifaceted eyes glowed softly. So be it. We will aid you in forging alliances. We have contacts who might open doors to both the Dominion and the GDF. The question is whether they'll listen to a Zender-human hybrid. But perhaps seeing is believing. Despite the exhaustion and the lingering pain from the disruptor, Samara felt a strange surge of hope. Only a short time ago, she'd been a station doctor patching up random injuries. Now, she stood at the crossroads of entire civilizations. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, betrayal, and unimaginable possibilities. But she wasn't alone. Radhin looked at her with a quiet resolve. Once I believed humans were frail. You proved me wrong. Your blood saved my life, then changed it. Now I realize we have more in common than I ever thought possible. Let's see what else we can accomplish together. She managed a trembling smile, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I'm ready, Commander. And so, within the hidden station cloaked by the swirling Morask Nebula, a human doctor and a Zender warrior stood side by side, connected by blood, bound by shared purpose. They were living proof of the Precursor's vision, a vision that could either unite the galaxy in a new era of cooperation or plunge it into unending conflict if placed in the wrong hands. As they gazed into each other's eyes, understanding that their journey was just beginning, a single truth crystallized between them. She had given her blood to an alien warrior, and in doing so, she had been rewarded with a destiny beyond imagination.